If you bought a loaf this week because the packaging looked wholesome or the price was right, you may want to take a second look. What reads like simple bread on the front often tells a different story on the back. Labels can show added sugars where you wouldn't expect them, sodium that creeps far higher than you'd guess, and long ingredient lists that sound more like a lab inventory than a kitchen. There are also situations where news reports have tied certain bread makers to quality control issues or recalls, even when the brand's image appears spotless. In this video, we're going to sort through all of it. 15 packaged bread brands you may want to skip if your goals include simpler ingredients, lower sugar, and less sodium. Then we'll finish with 5 options that may actually be worth your money. You'll hear exact brand names so you can find or avoid them easily. And because formulations change, use this as a guide and always verify with the package in your hand. Number 15, Panera Bread Everything Sliced. The bakery reputation is strong, which is why this one can feel surprising. On paper, Panera's Everything Seasoned Sliced Bread looks like a shortcut to that fresh shop flavor at home. In practice, the ingredient list can lean long for a pantry staple, with flavor add-ons and conditioners that try to mimic a from-the-oven experience. The base flour in many lots has been refined wheat rather than 100% whole grain. Sodium per slice can trend higher than you'd expect for a daily bread, and the everything topping encourages heavier use because it tastes great toasted. If you love the taste, you might treat it like a flavored bread for eggs or a weekend bagel swap, not a daily sandwich foundation. Number 14, Udi's Gluten-Free Cinnamon Raisin. Gluten-free shoppers often assume gluten-free equals healthier, but that is not always the case. To rebuild texture without gluten, manufacturers frequently rely on starches, gums, and added sugars, and this Udi's loaf can be an example. Per slice sugar and sodium may land closer to conventional sweetbreads than many expect, while fiber stays modest because the flours tend to be refined starches. If you genuinely need to avoid gluten, consider looking for short ingredient lists with seeds or intact grains like millet, buckwheat, or sorghum, and choose versions where sweetness comes mostly from the raisins, not added sugars. Number 13, Sun-Made Raisin Cinnamon Swirl. It smells like dessert in the best way. That is also the nutritional challenge. This loaf is built to be sweet, and sweetness here often comes from added sugars in addition to the raisins. The texture is soft, and the swirl is generous, but that means you can end up with a dessert-level sugar load in what looks like a simple piece of toast. If you enjoy a cinnamon raisin moment, you might make it an occasional treat and pair it with protein or nut butter to blunt the sugar punch, rather than using it as your everyday bread. Number 12, Home Pride Butter Top Wheat. The wheat on the front can read like a promise of whole grain goodness. Flip the label and you may see enriched wheat flour listed first, which is still refined flour with added vitamins rather than a true whole grain. Some formulas have included high fructose corn syrup and preservative systems designed for softness and shelf life. Calories per slice can look light, but most people eat 2 slices, and the sugar can add up. If you want wheat bread that behaves more like a whole food, look for 100% whole wheat or whole grain as the first ingredient and keep the sweeteners low. Number 11, Martin's Potato Bread. People love the tenderness and slightly sweet flavor, and for burgers and French toasts, it's a fan favorite. Nutritionally, this lands closer to an indulgence than a staple. The potato is typically potato flour, which is fine as an ingredient, but it does not bring the benefits of intact whole grains. Added sugar and multiple conditioners create that pillowy crumb. If your priority is a soft bun or a decadent grilled cheese, this bread delivers. If your priority is fiber and fewer additives, you may want it as a once-in-a-while pick. Number 10, Bimbo Large White. Bimbo is a massive baking group with dozens of labels. The branded Bimbo Large White loaf tends to be classic refined white bread. You may see a short fiber tally, modest protein, and a longer ingredient list to ensure softness over time. In separate, widely reported incidents across the category over the years, large bakeries have occasionally announced recalls tied to equipment or packaging issues. That is not unique to any one logo, but it is a reminder to scan batch codes and keep packages you buy. If white bread is non-negotiable for your household, you sometimes find white made with whole grain variants that lift fiber and shorten the ingredient list. Number 9, Nature's Harvest. The branding leans wholesome, and some formulas emphasize whole grains. Where this label has drawn criticism at times is the balance between clean label marketing and real-world shelf life. When preservatives are pulled without reworking process controls, mold may appear sooner than shoppers expect. There have been news stories about short-dated mold issues and resulting adjustments. Mold itself is not an automatic emergency, but it is never something you want to see early. If you choose this brand, aim for the freshest date and store it cold if your kitchen runs warm. Number 8. King's Hawaiian Sweet Rolls. Delicious, iconic, and essentially a treat food. These rolls get their signature softness and flavor from sugar, enriched flour, and fats that push texture into dinner roll territory. That is wonderful for sliders and parties. Less ideal as your default sandwich bread. Think of them the way you think of a pastry. Plan for the sugar and enjoy them when they make sense. Number 7. Great value, Walmart, sliced breads. Store brands help households manage budget pressure, and that absolutely matters. The trade-off can be in ingredient quality and quality control consistency. There have been consumer reports and recall notices in the private label space over time citing foreign material risks or packaging defects. Again, these issues can occur across the whole industry and don't mean every loaf is a problem, but it is another reason to be choosy. Pick the whole grain SKUs with shorter labels and inspect the loaf at the shelf. Number 6. Country Kitchen Hearty Canadian White. The name sounds rustic and energetic. The panel on the back can tell a different story, with a refined flour base, a longer list of conditioners and emulsifiers, and sodium that nibbles away at your daily target. The flavor is pleasant and the crumb is soft, but if you are trying to shift your diet toward intact grains and simpler formulas, this is not the easiest win. You can often find a sister product in the same aisle that lists whole wheat flour first. Number 5. Freihoffer's Premium Italian. A regional favorite with an old-school vibe. Italian loaves like this are often formulated for stretch and softness, which can mean elevated sodium per slice and preservative systems tuned for shelf stability. People sometimes note that it stays soft far longer than homemade bread would. That is the goal, but if you are reading labels for a daily driver, you may want to compare sodium and fiber across a few brands and decide which trade-offs you prefer. Number 4. Sara Lee Thick White, Italian, and Texas Toast. If softness is the marketing promise, expect a formula that protects softness above all else. That can include dough conditioners and added sugars to amplify flavor. Per slice sodium can rise quickly once the slices are thick, and 2-slice portions double whatever you see on the panel. Large manufacturers in general also show up in news cycles about plant sanitation or wide recalls from time to time. Those reports don't mean every loaf is risky, but they are reminders to buy from high turnover stores, use bread promptly, and follow recall guidance when it appears. Number 3. Sunbeam Texas Toast. Thick-cut bread is perfect for garlic toast and hearty sandwiches, but bigger slices can push sodium and calories up even when the panel looks tame at first glance. Many formulas rely on refined flour and a set of additives that preserve softness in thicker cuts. If you love Texas toast for the occasional diner-style breakfast, great. If you are trying to build a daily sandwich habit with better macros, consider saving this one for special uses. Number 2. Pepperidge Farm, Farmhouse Hearty White and Sweet Hawaiian. The farmhouse story suggests homestyle, and the taste is undeniably satisfying. Where shoppers run into trouble is sugar and sodium. The Sweet Hawaiian can look more like a dessert bread in disguise, while the Hearty White may list sugar surprisingly high in the ingredients. If you enjoy Pepperidge Farm, their 100% whole wheat and thin slice lines can be easier on sugar targets. Otherwise, treat the farmhouse and Hawaiian varieties as flavorful extras, not your go-to. Number 1. Wonder Bread Classic White. An American icon and a textbook example of refined white bread. The airy bite comes from strong processing know-how, not from whole grains. Fiber is typically low, protein is modest, and flavor is engineered to be neutral and kid-friendly. For picky eaters or French toast, it does its job. If your goals include more fiber, steadier energy, and fewer additives, there are better everyday choices on the same shelf, including white made with whole grain styles or true whole grain options. If you are still with me, drop a loaf emoji in your head or quick "still here" in the comments. It helps more people find consumer guides like this. Now let's pivot to 5 breads that may actually be worth buying if you want cleaner ingredients and stronger nutrition without giving up a good sandwich. Food for Life, Ezekiel 4:9, Sprouted Grain Bread. This one shows up on almost every dietitian's shortlist because the first ingredient is not flour at all, but a mash of sprouted grains and legumes. Sprouting can make nutrients more available and can lift protein and fiber compared to standard loaves. There is typically no added sugar, and the ingredient list reads like a pantry, not a lab. The flavor is toasty and grain-forward, the texture is hearty, and it freezes beautifully. If you are coming from ultra-soft bread, toast is the gateway. Crisp edges, a little butter or avocado, and it clicks. Dave's Killer Bread Organic. Whole grains, including 21 whole grains and seeds, and Power Seed. Dave's built a brand on organic grains, visible seeds, and a story about second chances. On the panel, you generally see real fiber, real protein, organic ingredients, and low added sugar. Seed-heavy slices chew like food, not foam. And that slow chew helps with fullness. If you want a mainstream loaf that still feels artisanal, this is the vibe. For lighter sandwiches, the thin-sliced escallops keep calories in check without losing the seed mix. Silver Hills Bakery, Sprouted Grain Bread. A Canadian bakery with a devoted following in the US, Silver Hills leans into sprouted organic whole grains and keeps labels simple. Expect solid fiber, respectable protein, and very little added sugar across the line. The texture lands between Ezekiel's hearty chew and Dave's softer seeded crumb, which makes it versatile for toast, grilled cheese, and sandwiches. Because preservatives are minimal, you may want to refrigerate after opening if your kitchen runs warm. Nature's Own, 100% whole wheat. Not everyone can spend specialty loaf prices every week. Nature's Own 100% whole wheat is widely available, typically lists whole wheat flour first, avoids high fructose corn syrup, and tends to keep sugar reasonable. It is soft enough for kids and budget-friendly for families. If you are moving from white bread to whole wheat, this is an easy first step that does not feel like a compromise. Arnold, Brownberry, or Oro Wheat, 100% whole grain and seeds. Same company, different regional labels. Across these lines, you can find robust whole grain formulas with flax, sunflower seeds, and oats that lift fiber and bring a nutty flavor. If you want a classic deli sandwich on a slice that holds up, these loaves do it without resorting to long lists of mystery additives. Look for versions where whole wheat flour leads and added sugars stay low. Before we wrap, a quick playbook you can use on any bread aisle. First, read the first ingredient. Look for whole wheat flour, whole grain flour, or a sprouted grain blend. Enriched or wheat flour without whole is refined. Second, scan the sugar line. For everyday bread, aim for as little added sugar as possible per slice. Third, check fiber. 2 or more grams per slice is a simple benchmark for a better choice, and many sprouted or seeded loaves go higher. Fourth, compare sodium across brands. Bread can quietly add hundreds of milligrams to your day. Fifth, skim the ingredient list. Fewer and more familiar is generally better for daily use. If a loaf reads like a science project, it is probably focused on cost, softness, and shelf life more than nutrition. A few power moves if you buy in bulk or live solo. Freeze half the loaf on day 1 and thaw as needed. Toast your whole grain slices when you are transitioning from softer white bread. Pair bread with protein and healthy fats so your sandwich works harder for fullness and energy. If you found this helpful, tell me which bread is in your kitchen right now and what you want reviewed next. I have included brand names here so you can find the exact products you want in the links. If you want a budget swap, ask in the comments and I will suggest a similar option at a lower price. Like the video if it helped, share it with someone who loves a good sandwich, and subscribe so you do not miss the next deep dive. Eat well, read labels, and take care of yourself and your people.